Great. Well, thank you very much for having us, Jonathan, and of course the team at WAV. My name is Steven Bronken, and joining me, of course, is Scott Fain. Combined together, we have over 30 years selling hospitality technology into this vertical. So we hope to address a lot of questions that you may have and really let you become familiar with, what Ruckus means to hospitality and what hospitality means to Ruckus. So obviously, hospitality was one of the key foundation vertical that Ruckus started with back over 20 years ago, and we continue to grow and focus on that vertical. It's truly a cornerstone of our business, and we make sure that we work very, very closely with all the hotel brands and consultants and LSPs and so forth like that in the industry to make sure that our product is always relevant and, of course, keeping pace with the market and with technology innovations. So, starting out today, what we're actually going to cover here is we're going to give you a brief introduction on the hospitality market overview. Then we're going to get into direct built for the hotel, not for the hype, where we actually right size specific products for the right type of hotel that you will be deploying in. Of course, we're also going to touch base on LSP success drivers. So what do we see our land service providers succeeding when they're going out there to deploy, and what is necessary, of course, for them to get out there and to really be a key LSP in this market. We're also going to talk about the art of the possible. We are not going to touch base on RUCKUS One HSP edition today. That will leave for a future date. But of course, we can also schedule that one-on-one. It's a great product that we have that we built with the hospitality brands specifically to make sure that we're meeting all their needs and we're selling it left, right, and center. So it's definitely a great product for them. So to begin with, let's get right into the hospitality market overview. So essentially, this is to give you an idea of the size of the market for hospitality. And this is, of course, a global number here. But overall, as you'll see, before you start trying to pick the product for the right size hotel, you should understand how large that actual hotel size market is. So a lot of that, of course, is economy. There's over 33,000 economy hotels in the world. And that's globally, of course. We've got over 7,500 mid-scale. We've got 42,000, almost 43,000 upscale hotels and 2,024 premium. That's, of course, a very large number of properties globally. And realistically, not all hotels are built the same. They have different needs. Some, for example, have conference centers, some do not. Some are more economy than others. Some want to offer a bit of a premium experience, and some want to offer the same experience wherever you go globally, and it's more of your select service brands. So realistically, you want to make sure that you have the right product for the right hotel, and that's not only to fit their requirements in terms of technology, but also to fit the requirements in terms of pricing. So that's very, very key. So we've developed a great kind of product mix, which we're going to get to here in about 3 slides, where we'll actually get into which products you should be using for which properties. Now, when we break down the global hotel property and guest room by region, as I'm not sure which region you're dialing in from today, we're looking at North America, for example, which is NAR, has almost 95,000 properties, of which 6.6 million hotel rooms. There's almost 45,000 in EMEA, over 50,000 in APAC, and 11,256 properties in CALA, which is Caribbean and Latin America, of course. APAC is Asia Pacific, EMEA is Europe, Middle East, Africa, and of course, NAR is North American region, just in case you needed any further clarification on that. So as you can see, the hospitality market is rather large. So there's definitely a lot of great opportunities out there. Now we're going to get into built for the hotel and not for the hype. And I'm going to pass this over to Scott Fain, who will walk us through the different solutions for the right sizing of the hotels.
Thank you, Stephen. Okay, thank you. Appreciate the introduction there. So, hospitality is made up of, a lot of different networks, right? When you have a hotel, it can be a lot of different areas, and each of those areas has its own unique setup and needs. So as you see in this drawing, there's a lot going on in hotel networks, right? We all think of just connecting the Wi-Fi for guest usage, and that's kind of how it started. But a lot of other systems were very confined to certain areas. For instance, you start with great guest Wi-Fi, but now you have the back of house staff needs their solutions for, housekeeping or for security or for, other areas of the business. And then there's other revenue generating opportunities that you shouldn't take for granted. Walk around handheld point of sale devices, where the property can make so much money walking around the pool, getting people drinks and food. That goes a really long way and was sort of ignored for quite a long time. But in the last 4 or 5 years, especially with contactless payment being very, very easy, whether it's phone based or credit card based, it's very easy to walk around and upsell. And so these networks really need to be solid. They need to be secure. They need to work all the time, because if they don't, the property loses money. And then obviously you have, sort of the guest impressions, right? When they think that things aren't going well, they are not going well. It doesn't matter if they are or aren't. If the guests think that things aren't going well, then you're going to hear about it. So what you really want to do is build a purpose-built, purpose-driven network that meets these needs. And we believe at Ruckus, we can do all of these in one package. So our AI-driven converged platform. So we won't dive too much into RUCKUS One, but RUCKUS One, as a lot of you know, is our cloud-driven new controller base, but also with AI-driven analytics, we can not only command and control our APs and switches and ancillary devices, but we can see into what's going on, and AI can give us the heads up about what's going on that humans can't see. The best engineers in the world can only watch 2 or 3 screens at a time, right? But AI can watch everything at one time, and it can really correlate things that are going on in the network that look like they're standalone. Like if you have an issue in one part of the network, it might mean you may focus there, but really the problem may have been derived somewhere else. So the idea is that the AI-driven platform through RUCKUS One, it sees it all, and it correlates these events together and puts the idea, the resolution together for you if it can derive it, and then tells you exactly where to look for the problem and then look for the fix. And that's where, really this comes in. Not to scare people off, AI is driven in everything these days. But I think what we want to start with is, look, command and control of our APs and switches is still the #1 factor. And then from there, everything is driven to make the solution more robust and easier to troubleshoot. And the mean time to resolution then comes down, and that eventually saves everyone money. So here's our Wi-Fi 7 access point family. As you see here, it's quite robust now. We're almost to the end of the cycle of introducing new platforms. You will see that everything that is gray as in released has been out for at least a year, most everything. We have 3 new access points coming out this year, and 1 due in very short order in 2027. We've completed our sort of top-down, large to small, access points introductions. So the R770, for instance, is great for your ballrooms and very large indoor public spaces. The R670 is going to be for your hotel lobbies where the bar is, still high density, but not as big as the ballrooms. So these would be, R670 would be like junior ballrooms, conference rooms, the bar, indoor spaces. And the R575 is coming out. If you notice, you'll see 2 by 2 by 2. That means that as a tri-radio with 6 gigahertz access point, this is going to be for your corridors, your elevator lobbies, your smaller spaces, but it supports 6 gigahertz. And the 574, those of you who are veterans of the naming conventions at Ruckus, we decided that we wanted to have the flexibility of going high or low. So you'll see 575 moving forward as the basis for the regular access point. And now it gives us the opportunity to go downwards. So we're taking the R575 and removing the 6 gigahertz radio for locations that don't need 6 gigahertz and to lower the price. But the AP works exactly the same way. It's still going to be your elevator lobby and hallway deployment access point. if you do not need 6 gigahertz. And we'll get to the reasons why you do or don't need this in the future. The T375 is coming out. This is going to be our outdoor access point. It's a smaller version of the T670, which has been out for a while. Comes in both your Omni and your sector variants. And then we're shooting the H375 that will be coming out later. The beta will be later this year, and the committed date for general availability is January of 2027. This is our replacement for the H350, and in a lot of cases, possibly the replacement for H550, where you don't need 6 gigahertz. And most of the hoteliers I've been polling are indifferent about 6 gigahertz. If it means raising the price, then they can do without it. So we believe the H375 is going to be a great access point for the vast majority of properties who in the portfolios today. So this is just a quick recap on Wi-Fi 6. Wi-Fi 6 is still being sold. None of them have been end of sale. We don't know how much further that's going to take us. Probably another year, maybe 18 months. So when it comes time to selling, you want to talk about the return on investment of a Wi-Fi 7 access point versus a Wi-Fi 6 access point. Let's say, for instance, you get 5 years plus, the end of sale plus 5 years on an access point. So if we're going to sell the Wi-Fi 6 for another year or 18 months, that's 6.5 years of investment time before that access point goes end of life. A Wi-Fi 7 access point is going to be sold for 3 to 4 years plus 5 years. So you're talking about an 8 to 9 year ROI. So even though the Wi-Fi 7 access point might be a little bit more expensive, it might be worth the investment if you're looking at holding your property for a long time. And so when you start talking about ownership getting involved, you want to talk ROI to them. The tech person is going to be, yeah, let's do Wi-Fi 7. I love it. I want the latest and greatest. But the ownership really needs to hear about the return on investment of their money, because hoteliers are real estate folks. They understand that, and they want to get the return on their investment. Wi-Fi 6E, as a lot of you guys know, was basically a Wi-Fi 6 access point where we just added the third radio. The technology was the same. We just added the third radio. So we didn't really release that for very long because Wi-Fi 7 came very quickly. We have a few of these APs left in stock. In certain instances, it makes sense to put them in. But for the most part, we're leaning more towards Wi-Fi 7 as our long-term plan. Here's our switching portfolio. The 7550 and the 7850 have been out for quite a long time. Very mature product, very well known in the business, and are very solid. The 8200s have been out now for a couple of years, and those of you familiar with them should find that these are really high performance switches for an edge switch. They even feature 25 gig uplinks on all the different models. They all stack together. So if you have some regular PoE ports that need stacking with some multi-gig for a conference area, you can stack them all together. And then our F series switches are what we call the fiber to the room switches. Anytime that you see something like GPON or anything like that, and you want to sell active Ethernet in lieu of a PON installation, these are the switches that you would put in. So these are the distribution switches, that connect to things like our fiber, would then give the PoE out to the access point in the room. So very happy to have a full complement of switches in the 8200. And then we just introduced this past year the ICX 8100, and these are more economy driven, but more hospitality driven, because 1 gig Ethernet is almost always all you need for guest rooms. Even into some mid-sized properties. So if you're running H375s or H350s or H550s today, the 8100 can absolutely do the job. The 8100 has 1 gig uplinks. The 8100X has 10 gig uplinks. So choose whichever one you need. If you're more an economy driven, you can stick with the 8100. And if you're in one of the major brands that requires the ability to do 10 gig, then you can move to the 8100X. So let's talk about the different types of hotels. So Steven mentioned before that we have, economy, we have mid-scale, and then we have premium type property solutions. So we have a solution that matches the type of hotel that you're in. So for a long time, people thought that Ruckus was too expensive to put into an economy hotel. And we all know those brands where, you know, these are the 60 to 80, maybe 100 room properties, maybe sub $100 a night average roommates. It was always thought that Ruckus was too expensive for those solutions. But what we've found is that's not exactly true, because the value not only that we bring at Ruckus, but the ability to stretch your dollar, because our access points can cover so much more area than sort of our competition in this space. So the R350E is a variant of the R350, which has we've stripped some of the cost out of it. We've sort of depopulated some of the software features, but none of them that we really can't live without. And we've dropped the price there so that these are great for hallway deployments, for sort of stick built, very easy to cover locations, and we can cover more rooms on average than most. So when you do your surveys, you're going to find out that you have less APs to buy. The H350 is a great in-room access point, of course, and it stretches as well. It has great coverage both in front and behind, so we can cover a lot of space. The 8100 series is great here. A picture of the 16 port here. Depending on how your layout is, you can use 16 port or 24. This is very critical for the economy brands because it's a low entry cost, and but yet you have that Ruckus, you know, quality built in. Ruckus Unleashed is absolutely a viable product for the economy brands. As you know, one of the APs is elected as the master, and the rest of the APs connect to it for management purposes. And so you manage the access point from internal, but now we also have what's called remote management services for Unleashed. And now the one hiccup with managing things on property is you had to have a VPN or you had a firewall hole to manage it from remote. Now with RMS for Unleashed, we have a cloud service which manages and aggregates those different Unleashed instances, and it's hosted by Ruckus. It's managed by Ruckus from an infrastructure standpoint, but whoever purchases the licenses, and they're very inexpensive licenses, they have access to the instance and can manage it remotely. So it's really a great option. So please, you know, check in with your local sales team about RMS for Unleashed, and I think you'll find that a demo would be quite cool there. So if we move up a model, a hotel tier here, we're talking about your 100-room, 150-room hotels from some of the major brands. They can also be independents, but a lot of times, you know, they're going to fall in that same category where they're not economy, they're mid-tier. And so we are still going to use the H350. It's a great access point. We're going to move to the R350 and the R550s for hall room deployments. And then the T350 is our outdoor deployment here. The 8100, still great access point aggregator and PoE generator. And then for our software platform, we're going to move to Virtual Smart Zone, or we're going to move to RUCKUS One Hospitality Edition also. And in the two tiers there, RUCKUS One Core. So you might be talking to a branded, one of the major brands, and they have access to what's called RUCKUS One Core. And it's a lower level of the controller. It still manages the APs and switches, and it's a bit lower cost. And so this is really, most hotels in the world are select service, as we saw, and 150 to 200 rooms or less. This is really kind of where we stamp out these, and we pump out a lot of business in this space right here. So in full service hotels, not only branded, but boutiques, we're going to move up a tier. So the H550 and the H670 are the APs that we want to use in the rooms. The H550 is a very well-known Wi-Fi 6 access point. I've been doing this for quite a long time. The H670 is our brand new Wi-Fi 7 access point. This access point is tri-band. It has 6 gigahertz. It really brings the power and the bandwidth to the room for the high-end properties. You'll find that it covers very well and should be able to cover the 1 to 2 that most of the properties require, even on 6 gigahertz, and that's key. The R670, as I mentioned before, is our medium size. You put this into these full service hotels in the lobby bar, in the small to medium conference rooms. And then T670 is for your pools, especially the high density areas where you have hundreds of people and they're all on their phones, and then you want the point of sale. This is the AP for them. 8100 still works great here. Most of this is going to be 1 gig. And because of that, the 8100 is still a great access point, or sorry, switch to uplink at 10 gigs. And now Virtual Smart Zone, still a great opportunity here. But now RUCKUS One, we're still in the hospitality edition, but now we can move into RUCKUS One and we can talk about the professional tier. Some of the guests, depending on the individual property, we could use Core or Pro here. If they have conference space, they're probably going to want to use Pro. If they don't have a lot of conference space, they can probably live with Core, which is just the basic features. Right. And then finally, the highest tier obviously are the large conference hotels. And there's a lot of money to be made, not only in the guest rooms with selling room nights, but obviously in the conference spaces. And this is where RUCKUS One and RUCKUS shines, because we don't go down. Like, we stay up, we keep everything moving. We have high density, high throughput, high performance access points and switches. And the H670, obviously for the guest rooms in these high, 4 and 5 plus star hotels. The R770, as I mentioned before, these are for your big ballrooms. They super high density, just rock solid technology based on the lineage of the R7 series from the past. And then the 8100 can also be mixed in for the 8200 here. The graphics a little bit wrong, but the 8200 is where we want to go here. The 8200 is higher density from a multi-gig standpoint. We can do multi-gig in the conference spaces where the R770, R670 need that 2.5 and 5 gig, uplinks. And then you can use up to 25 gig uplinks as well. So if you have a lot of bandwidth at your disposal, you might want to use those 25 gig uplinks. Virtual Smart Zone, once again, still can scale. It still works really well for either an on-prem or LSP-based solution. And RUCKUS One Pro is where you want to be here. This has the analytics. This has the self-healing, the self-management of a lot of the features that you want to have in a revenue-generating environment. If you sell a conference for 2,000 people and they have all your guest rooms bought out, and then they have a huge conference down in the ballrooms, the last thing you want is for anything to go down. RUCKUS One Pro can actually do the pre-staging. You can change the type of environment you're building from a high density to a high bandwidth. You can change, you can do the testing beforehand. So over the weekend, you can have it do self-tests and make sure all the APs are up, the switching bandwidth is good. Lots of things here with RUCKUS One that are built into the product, and you can really sell this to those conference solutions because they're making a lot of money on these properties. It's not overhead. On these conferences, they're making, and this is why they're in business. And if they lose money, you're going to hear about it. So I believe that's the last one, right? Yep. Okay. So thank you, Steven. And I'll go back.
Great. Thank you, Scott. That was great. And definitely, as everyone can see, we have put a lot of thought, effort, research development, of course, into making sure that we have the right size product for the right size of hotel. So it's really, again, just not about putting whatever we have at a hotel and trying to, get the price that you want on the quote. It's really, we've thought about this. We've done a lot of effort and work over the last many years to make sure that we're right sizing the right solution for the right size hotel. So here's some other reasons, though, why RUCKUS has been successful in hospitality. Of course, RUCKUS, we've, as I mentioned before, hospitality is one of our key cornerstones. And we've got a full team built for the hospitality market, which we have globally to support our LSPs, to support our brands, to support the industry, to make sure that we're delivering the best Wi-Fi to the guests possible. So some of the success factors that we've shown is that, of course, we built dependable, purpose-built hospitality products. We've got Wi-Fi 5 products still out there today, even older, that are built like tanks, that are still providing Wi-Fi and great solutions out there. Obviously the technology is a little bit old, but the product keeps working. We really offer a robust solution that is dependable for the property. We also, of course, our team has continuous communication with the brands, which lead to innovation. So for us, it's not just about what we think the hotel needs. We actually have in-depth conversations with them to make sure that we're aligning with their roadmap, so that our products are on track for what the hospitality industry wants to achieve. In addition to that, we have strong networks between us and our LSP partners. Our LAN service provider partners are really the key for us. We do not sell direct to a brand. We sell all through LAN service providers with the aid of our distribution partners such as WAV. And that's the only way that we go to market. So you will never find us competing with you at a property or trying to, interfere with a sale, so to speak. We're all about making that win for you and for us. In addition to that, we have a consistent pricing strategy. So we offer consistent pricing across the board for the hospitality industry. We will never go out there and offer one partner a better price than another partner on a property. We want to remain Switzerland. That's our key. We want to keep everything neutral and have the same opportunity for both partners to win that deal. In addition to that, we have over 20 years of product knowledge within the channel. As I mentioned, I've been in the industry myself personally for 19 years. Of those 19 years, I've sold RUCKUS Networks products for about 17 of them. And that's before I joined RUCKUS just about 4 years ago. So the company's been around for a very long time in terms of Wi-Fi and technology in the hospitality space. And all of that knowledge that we've accrued over those years really shows in our product, our development, and our purpose. In addition to that, of course, stable product. We've got less support requirements than others, which is great. People grew up on RUCKUS. They're used to our products. They're used to our services. And realistically, that keeps everybody coming back for more. And of course, we have, as I mentioned before, a channel first market strategy. So these things are key in this industry. Now, what do LSPs, what do they need to have in order to sell into the space? So there could be some listeners, for example, that are out there that are, this is their first time or their first venture into a hospitality market. They're not really sure what a hospitality client will be looking for as an LSP. So these are kind of some of the key items or key takeaways that are needed. So of course, first one is pricing. It's very sensitive in the hospitality market. Way back when the hotel actually used to be, the IT team used to be a revenue center way before the iPhone, right? Essentially, long distance call used to make the hotel money. You would rent a movie on the television, which would be charged to your room. Of course, that would make the hotel money. And then if you did have internet, it was typically dial up or the LAN connection that was in your room, and you'd be paying for that for the $12 or $13 for 12 hours or something like that. So these IT centers used to be revenue generators. And then, of course, as time moved on and new technology came out, such as the iPhone, all of those revenue center generators kind of went away. If you want to make a call now, you make it on your iPhone or on your Android phone. If you want to watch a movie, you either watch it on your phone or you cast it to the television through your phone. In addition to that, you're now getting Wi-Fi for free at a lot of these properties. So pricing has become really, really sensitive in this market. So that's why trying to find the right solution for the right hotel is key. Additional to that, as Scott alluded to earlier in the webinar, is that we typically use less APs. If you do a proper RF map of a property, a lot of our competitors will actually put an access point in every room. And we can do that. Absolutely, we can do that. But in most cases, when we deploy that, because our APs are so strong, we have to shut down every second AP just so that there's not too high of SNR or signal to noise ratio to make a proper running network. So that's one of the key things that we ensure that we do is, we build strong products. You can use less APs in most cases and pick the right product to use. And of course, we've got the full, kind of stack that we just went through earlier, which we have the ability to do. The other LSP needs to have the ability to install a complete suite of products. So most hotels are looking for the full suite from the point of connection to the access point all the way through to the gateway, all the way through to connecting to the internet. So essentially from the DMARC in a lot of cases, that's what you're worried about connecting to. And then there could be some cloud managed software as well. So you've got to have the ability to be able to sell all those components. They want one touch point to be able to manage all those devices, as well as wiring infrastructure. You also need, of course, a 24/7 by 365 contact center to answer those calls. And there are a lot of them from guests who will pick up the phone and give a call because they can't figure out the temperature, how to change the thermostat, to how to change channels on the television. You'll get all kinds of calls, but you still need that. You need that 24/7 contact center. And then, of course, you need the ability to have truck rolls across their property portfolio. Now, if you don't have the last two, of course, with the Star, we've been in the business long enough. We can definitely recommend some partners that you connect with that can provide those services to you. All right, now let's talk about the art of the possible. So we've talked about right sizing for the proper hotel, but let's talk about, how do we get a little bit creative and how can we deliver more than just Wi-Fi at these properties? The first one, of course, is Hotspot 2.0 or Passpoint technology. We've actually deployed this with some of the brands that we work with today. It's a really cool technology. We find that in my experience, the most guest reason that they will reach out to that toll-free number is during the authentication process. It causes a little bit of friction for them. They either, they're not sure how to do it. Maybe the splash page won't turn on. Maybe they've got a VPN, which is preventing that from happening. Maybe there's something going on that prevents them from reaching that splash page on the gateway that prevents them from actually authenticating. So one of the ways to counter that and to reduce the number of telephone calls that you get is actually by looking at Hotspot 2.0 or Passpoint. Essentially, Ruckus has this built in, the ability where we're the plumbing, essentially, you can do it through an app provided to you from the brand, where if you have that app, there's a bit of a profile or a token, so to speak, that you have on your phone. And the moment that you connect to the Wi-Fi there, it automatically authenticates you for service against a Passpoint or Hotspot 2.0 service provider who is managing that for that brand. And essentially what that allows the guest to do is they get to the property, they've already connected to the Wi-Fi automatically on their phone across the product portfolio, and they don't have to worry about it. Therefore, there's one less call to your contact center. So, and of course, multiple roaming partners are provided over the single SSID, which is there. Next one, of course, is IoT. So IoT is something that is very cool. Of course, I myself have over 80 devices, IoT devices connected at my house. It's something anywhere from light bulbs to thermostats to televisions to etc. They want to have a connection, guest locks, etc., curtains, everything, and the ability to connect to that is really something that's cool. If you want to have on your app for that property the ability to handle all this, you need IoT, and of course you need some mechanism of managing that. So that's one of the other services that we have. Many of those APs that Scott had mentioned before actually have IoT radios built in, whether they be BLE, beaconing, or Zigbee, etc. So we have that capability built within those access points. Then, of course, enhanced gaming, for example, maybe enhanced networking, enhanced speeds. That's the ability of Wi-Fi 7, which of course delivers, higher speeds, lower latency. You want to do virtual reality. If you're trying to do that on an older network or even casting on an older network, that might be troublesome. Whereas if you have a Wi-Fi 6 or Wi-Fi 7 network, you're going to get that better experience in doing it. And of course, we talk about dynamic pre-shared key. Dynamic pre-shared key is consider it like your own, in essence, your own personal area network within a property. So essentially, you log have your family there. Maybe you're in an extended stay property where you're going to be there for a few weeks and you have a printer that you're sharing amongst other coworkers or a gaming system or some sort of device which you want to be able to share amongst you and the other guests or you and your friends that are on this stay together. Essentially, what dynamic pre-shared key does is when you log in and you log in with that PSK, it actually lets you share devices on the network together, and it keeps you separate from other guests which may be at that property, and you don't need to do anything special. I mean, within the network, yes, there's some special sauce, so to speak, needed, but for the guest, it's a very seamless experience. So it's kind of a cool technology to use. And that's kind of that brings us to our question slide. So I guess Jonathan, I'll hand it back to you if you want to answer or ask us any questions that any of the viewers may have.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we jump in, let's share the poll
One
results
second,
here. So,
Jonathan. Sorry, let us
yep.
turn back on the volume on our end. We did that to avoid feedback.
Okay. Can you
Okay,
hear me
please
good
go
now?
ahead.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for covering all that information. You both covered a lot of really good info there. We do have a good amount of questions that came in, but let's share the poll results real quick here so that we can cover them a little bit, and then we'll jump into some questions. So sharing the results here. What guest-facing application puts the most strain on your hotel networks today? It looks like 57% said high density of simultaneous devices per room. And in second place, we have high definition video streaming like Netflix, YouTube, etc. Okay. Question number 2, beyond your guest Wi-Fi, which staff or back of house system is your top priority for your network reliability? And it looks like we're kind of split there between POS in restaurants and gift shops at 43% there. And also 43% said smart home or smart room automation, such as lighting, climate control, locks, etc. Just like you just covered, actually. Did you want to touch on any of those 2 points before I go on with the other questions?
Yeah, I can join in. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so this is kind of what we would expect folks to say, right? So high number of devices per room, everyone has at least a phone, if not a phone and a laptop, and sometimes a tablet, and they may all be in use. And then I know that we do a lot in tourist areas, obviously. And so, you might have 4 people to a room, with your kids, and they're not just, looking at, one thing, they're looking at 2 or 3 things. And so the number of devices per room and the bandwidth draw for each of those devices is critical. And that's why, Steven mentioned that, yes, we have networks that are quite old and they're working quote unquote fine for 2017, 2018, 2019 timeframes, but everyone has a lot more devices than they used to. So when 2026 rolls around, you need to start be thinking like, I need devices that are going to last me 26 to 36. How do I build my network for the next 10 years? And you need to think about what your long-term plan is, because maybe the cheapest isn't the best, because it's expensive when you have to pay for something twice. So buy it once the first time and buy it once and keep it for a long time. So this is great. And high definition video and streaming and casting is definitely on the up and up. Point of sale, I think I mentioned this specifically. Point of sale is absolutely a critical thing. We get a lot of people who come back to us and said, hey, I have like 3 access points by the pool, but I need like a lot more coverage. And it's good because you can always add more. You're not ripping out what you had before. But point of sale is almost always the reason that people want to add more outdoor APs. Smart room automation, right? Almost everyone has some sort of automation at their house now. And, when they go on the road, a lot of us are on the road a lot, business folks. We don't like to go backwards in life. Like we go home and we have all this really cool stuff, automation.
Right.
And now if you go in a hotel room that's kind of like old and you're like, well, now I got to get up and turn the light out. It'd be nice to just log into my phone and turn the lights out. So this is great. This is exactly what I'd expect to hear.
Yeah, definitely. Great takeaway there. Definitely future-proof your networks because technology is not stopping. And 5 years is like a lifetime in the eyes of of Wi-Fi. So yeah. Next question here. In your experience, what is the most common pitfall when designing a hospitality network? Looks like 83% of the answers were underbuilding, leading to dead zones and guest complaints, which is something that we've all experienced multiple times at different hotels and resorts. So what can you tell us about that?
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. The good thing is underbuilding, it starts off as a problem, but really you can usually add to it. So it's not a huge deal, but the problem is like what you end up with is, it's low bid wins, right? And so it's tough out there. Steven mentioned cost and pricing is a huge key. And I think the thing is education of the decision makers at the property, right? So
Right.
the GM, when he gets the bill, doesn't really know, he or she doesn't really know exactly what it is they might be buying. So if they get two quotes and they're like, well, if they don't have any perspective as to which one of those is better, they're going to take the lower one, right?
Right.
And so the key is education. So the idea is to go in, and in a Ruckus built network, you're going to have, we mentioned our coverage is better. We mentioned our density is better. And with AI analytics, these things can kind of tell you how your network is actually performing. And so the idea would be is you go and you actually give, instead of just handing a piece of paper with a bottom line, because everybody looks right to the bottom, how much is this going to cost me?
Right.
You have to explain why it is. It might cost a little bit more, but it's going to A, last you longer, and it's going to perform for you so that you don't get guest complaints. And so, but once you've chosen a path, and you've made sort of the wrong vendor decision, now that is very difficult to rip out, right? So now you have to add more APs, whereas you could have purchased the right size network the first time if you had chosen someone like Ruckus.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And
measuring twice and cutting
just to
once
build
is...
onto that, sorry.
Yeah.
One of our clients that we actually had in EMEA explained that they had a Ruckus deployment that was quite old. It was I think it was version 5 or earlier, actually, even than that, Wi-Fi 5 or earlier, and they ended up taking all that out. This was during the pandemic, and they went with one of our competitors, and they went and deployed a competitive solution based on a one-to-one deployment. So wherever there was a Ruckus AP, they put one of our competitor APs. And this was in a hospitality property. What they ended up having to do is they couldn't get the same coverage out of our competitor's product, and it was terrible. So they ended up ripping out the competitor's product from another property that they had just deployed as well, brought that in to augment the first deployment, and then bought Ruckus to deploy at the other property that they had, right? So in this case, they just about had to use 2 APs for every one that we did with Ruckus. So you want to talk about budgets going up based on picking the wrong product and getting the wrong experience. That's the exact way to do it. That's why Ruckus is known. I mean, just our quality and our coverage and everything else is the best. I mean, yes, we are a Cadillac, so to speak, in this market, but there's a reason for it. We have less issues, and we are a better product, and we have better coverage than anybody out there.
Absolutely. And the added cost that came with them having to learn that lesson, it's not a nice one.
Well,
and that's where it's very important to have your Wi-Fi networks properly designed. Measure twice, cut once, because once you put the gear up, then there's no room for errors then.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing I'll say too is not only the added cost of bringing teams in to redo all that, but also the added cost of lost business. Think about all the guests that walked away from that property that are never coming back, and that can't make the hotel very happy.
Absolutely. And that's where WAV, we can help you out. Also, we provide a Wi-Fi design assistance as well. So reach out to us, email us at info@waveonline.com. If you have a Wi-Fi project coming up, send us the blueprints. We'll be more than happy to take a look at it, map it all out for you, provide you with a full Wi-Fi report. That way, when you present your quote to the customer, you can present it also a comprehensive Wi-Fi report that shows basically no dead zones, no overlap, and perfect coverage, pretty much. So.
Absolutely. And I do believe that WAV has been our main hospitality distributor, so to speak, for as long as Ruckus has been selling into hospitality. So you guys definitely have the experience and the know-how to get that done.
Absolutely. So yeah, we lean on our resources, everybody, and lean on all the experience we have because we put it together for you, pretty much. Next question here on our list here is what is? Oh, we already did this one here. Okay, what is the biggest challenge when managing edge and core switching infrastructure like ICX switches? It looks like 67% said ensuring enough power budget for next generation APs, which goes back to the designing aspect of it. Who would like to cover a little more detail on that?
Okay. Yeah. Absolutely. There is a bit more power draw for Wi-Fi 7 access points, but I'm not here to scare anybody that says that you need to rip out your entire infrastructure. Do your own testing. I would say there's probably about a 10 to 15% uplift in power draw from the new access points. There's a couple of features with ICX that now we can help manage that. The first is dynamic power allocation on the switches. So in other words, you're not hard coding the power allocation per port anymore. You basically turn on the dynamic power allocation. And if an access point asks for 30 watts, you give it 30 watts, but it ends up using 11 watts. Those other 19 watts can go back into the pool in order to turn up another access point. So what you're using is actuals instead of sort of theoreticals. And you can leave yourself a little bit of buffer. So for instance, like if you used to be able to put 48 APs on a 48 port switch, and now you need a 10% draw, sort of headroom, then you may need to cover off the last 4 ports of the switch. So maybe you're only doing 42 or 44 ports per 48 port, but you don't need to rip out and replace all your switches. That's why you'll see that most of the 81 and 8200s are still the same level of PoE per port as they had been in the 7150 world. And the reason is because the dynamic power allocation, as well as just the economies of scale, tell you that overall you're going to only use a few more ports and a few more watts of power. So that's easily done on the existing power that we have.
Excellent. Thank you, Scott. And last question here is also a tie. What is the main outcome you hope to take away from today's RUCKUS Network session? 43% said strategies to reduce total cost of ownership, which we covered a couple already. And the other 43% said a better understanding of RUCKUS One cloud capabilities. We lightly touched on it this presentation, but we'll definitely be following up with a RUCKUS One cloud capability webinar at some point. Now that we know that that's definitely a hot topic there to cover. So thank you to everybody who participated in some of those responses there. It helps us fine tune our presentations and give you more of the information that you're looking for. Now let's jump to a couple other questions here besides the poll ones here. And we have time for a couple before we hit the mark here. Let's see here. One of them has to do with analytics. So how can hotels leverage RUCKUS analytics to better understand guest behavior and improve personalized experience? And also, how does RUCKUS help properties stay compliant with data privacy regulations while enabling guest analytics? Data is very important. It's worth more than gold nowadays. So what steps has RUCKUS taken for the security of that data and to help integrators kind of understand a little better of how to provide that personalized experience to guests?
Yeah. So first of all, mute. Yeah. So first of all, the first half of that is, analytics are streaming off the APs at all times, giving us all kinds of information. My sort of standard answer to the analytics question is we have the answer. What's the question? So we have a lot of data, not only about locationing and density and throughput and types of devices and capability of the devices. It's all stored, and RUCKUS One analytics will allow you to extract the information from it if you know the question you would like to ask. So that is another whole topic that we can get into for sure. From data privacy, we conform and subscribe to all the global data privacy rules and regulations. We have multiple versions of RUCKUS One, depending on the geo that you're in. For instance, in Europe, a lot of the European countries are a lot more strict with their data privacy laws. So we host our European version out of Frankfurt, Germany, which is probably the most strict of all. So most of the time, you're going to find that that's going to work. In the U.S., we host that here out of a couple of different locations here in the U.S., but mostly out of Northern Virginia and California. So, we have all of our compliances up to the SOC compliance and all the other certifications we need. So we take it very personally, and we're trying to secure that as best as can be done, and we follow all the rules and regulations we possibly can.
Great, thank you, Scott. Let's see. Here's another two-part question about IoT. Can RUCKUS segmentation capabilities isolate guest, staff, and IoT traffic without impacting performance? And also, can RUCKUS infrastructure support both Wi-Fi and IoT protocols, such as BLE and Zigbee, within a single unified network?
Yes. So the short answer is there's multiple ways to do this. If we start with the IoT protocols themselves, like Zigbee and BLE, the key thing is there's a lot of security built into the product itself. So talking to a device, that's where it starts. A lot of those devices that were first brought into the market were not secure at all. But we go through a pretty strict process of kind of certifying the devices that we attach to. Like, we have relationships with a lot of the IoT manufacturers, the door manufacturers, the thermostat manufacturers, et cetera. And we make sure that we start at the device itself so that security starts at the beginning. Once it hits the RUCKUS network, it is also part of the RUCKUS encrypted tunnel back to our IoT controller. So that data comes from the device, hits our access point, whether it's either Bluetooth or Zigbee. We send it securely to our IoT controller. And then from there, it's offloaded to the vendor's network. So if it's a door lock manufacturer, we send the information to them, and that's always going to be encrypted to their standard. And so the data at rest doesn't live on our IoT controller. So it's mostly, we're just pass through. So a lot of the security is built there. We can also do multiple VLANs. So we can have a VLAN just for IoT. We can have them for any other series of networks at the property. So, obviously admin networks can be secured over tunnels if need be. They can have encrypted devices on them, and that can be segregated from both IoT and from the guest network. So yes, on the switches and the APs, we can segregate all that traffic.
Great, thank you, Scott. We have time for one more question. We're going to squeeze every bit of knowledge that we can out of you here, so we take full advantage of this opportunity. How well does RUCKUS integrate with common hospitality systems like PMS, the property management systems, IPTV platforms, and third-party analytics tools?
All right, so there's a lot there, and Steven covered a little bit of that at the beginning, where we talked about from the top down. There are a lot of hotel networks that have devices such as gateways, such as point of sale systems, et cetera. One of the things that we do really well is that we are not a barrier to allowing devices to do what they need to do. So a point of sale station, for instance, right, the handheld, its encryption starts on that device and goes back to somewhere else. What we do is enable that to happen. So we don't necessarily need to do anything extra other than provide a WLAN and a VLAN, but we don't get in the way of those things either. And so from that perspective, a lot of those devices just sort of run natively, and they've been built to run over a Wi-Fi network. We didn't really touch on it much today, but we are getting we're looking into doing more integrations with possibly doing some PMS integrations, so that the Wi-Fi network can then talk directly to the hotel networks, and maybe speed some things up, maybe help with some integrations, maybe lower some costs in the future. And a lot of that is to be determined, but we're also looking for feedback, how people would like to use our networks and use our abilities. But those things are likely on the table, because we understand that the more disparate networks there are, the more complication there is. IPTV, for instance, when I first got in this business many years ago, there was a air-gapped network for IPTV because people didn't trust it on the HSIA network because they thought performance was critical, that they had to have it delivered on time. And if it pixelated, that there would be problems. Well, you'll find everywhere now that IPTV network runs on the regular switching because we've gotten it to the point where it's all reliable. It performs well. So more of that consolidation is happening. And Ruckus really, in a lot of ways, led the way with that because we had the ability and the high performance built into our products to be able to allow those such things. And then the confidence came later as we performed to now it's sort of a standard.
Excellent. Thank you for that response. Great questions. An awesome interaction. Thank you to everyone who attended and participated. We are out of time today. So huge thank you to Scott and Steven for today's information covered, as well as their ongoing support. And for all Ruckus projects, including hospitality, as well as any other vertical market, please shoot us an email at info@waveonline.com so we can assist you. We can provide you with design assistance, pre and post-sale support, staging and kitting services, as well as pre-configuration for a true plug-and-play deployment. And also, like always, reliable equipment stocking so that we have the gear that you need the moment that you need it. So we're your one-stop shop for all your network needs. So make sure to take full advantage of all the resources that we put together for you for your next deployment. Mm-hmm. And I hope everyone has an amazing rest of your week.
And until thank you, everybody. Everyone. Thank you, everybody, for attending. And thank you, Jonathan, of course, for hosting, and the WAV team for hosting us here in their Chicago office. Of course, for more information, get a hold of us. We're more than happy to help. And of course, thank you to WAV for being such an awesome partner for our clients. So thank you, everyone.
Great. Thank you. Have a great rest of your week. Bye, everybody.